Hi there, Alan Combies here, creator of this video series that I call Morning Coffee with Alan. And in today's video, I thought I would answer a question that I got on a comment on one of the videos that I have there. The video is titled 3 Keys to Improve Your FasterEFT Tapping. And the comment is from Dextro34. And they write, Alan, that was awesome. Thanks a lot. You have the talent to explain those complex things. Could you make a video about the flip/reimprinting and some techniques to achieve it? Great question, and thank you for your comment and your kind words. And I really do appreciate anybody and all of you who comment on the videos, who like them, who share them. It really helps me, encourages me to keep doing these, and gives me ideas like this one to create more content for you. So always my goal with these is to provide value for you so that you can work on yourself or maybe even other people. If you're a practitioner or you are interested in working with other people with this type of work, with this type of technique, I hope I can help you in that. So the flip, re-imprint. Let's start with, what is that? What is the flip? What is the re-imprint? So back when I first started using meridian tapping, what I would do is I'd usually work with one memory that would bother somebody. So someone would come to me and they would say, you know, I'm just not having a good relationship. And so I'd find all the memories they had with bad relationships, and I would just work on them one at a time. Now, of course, I've got ways that I can be much more efficient. However, this is just how I was doing things back, 2009 or so. And so what I would do is I would find a memory, and I would, you know, one that bothered them, and I would tap until it no longer bothered them. And usually it was just kind of like, you know, they were just kind of like, it's not a big deal, you know. And at that point I thought, okay, great, we're done, on to the next memory. What I have come to know now is that one of the things that I always mention, or I mention very often, is if you're going to hold on to anything, any memories or feelings, it might as well be something good. It might as well be something positive that makes you feel good and moves you in the direction of compassion and understanding and love. And so once I understood this, it became a game of sort of tapping down the negative emotion and tapping up the positive, essentially. So that is what is now in FasterEFT known as the flip or the re-imprint. So it's called the flip because what you're doing is you're taking a negative representation, a memory, let's say, and flipping it over to something positive. We also call it re-imprinting because we are dealing with imprints. An imprint is something like, if you think of a dog, you probably have a picture of a dog, and that is your imprint for a dog. Now you can imagine if someone was attacked by a dog and bitten, let's say, when they were small, a young child, their imprint of a dog is going to be much different than yours, and there's probably going to be some emotional attachment to that in a not so good way. So so that's why we call it re-imprinting. We're changing that imprint. Now, backing up just a bit, in order to talk about the re-imprinting or flipping, I think it's important to talk about one of the key fundamentals, again, in FasterEFT, which is something called the bad-good collapse. And the bad-good collapse is essentially taking a bad memory, let's say, and a good, taking the good, putting it over the bad, and collapsing it. So this is essentially what we are doing when we're working with FasterEFT, when we're tapping FasterEFT style, is we're looking to tap down the bad. These are all just labels, of course, for lack of a better terminology. Tap down the bad, replace it with the good, and collapse it. Now, you can do this without tapping. You can take, literally in your mind, you can take a bad experience, notice where it is in your mind's eye, right? It could be close, it could be far, it could be to the left, to the right, up, down. Just notice where it's at. You can do this now if you like. Notice where it is in your mind's eye. Good. Now think of something positive, like a fun vacation or a trip, or something that makes you feel very good. Maybe a place you like to go, something in nature, something really exciting, anything like that. And as you think about that, notice where that is in your mind's eye. Notice where that is. Is it close, far, up, down, left, right? Just notice where it is. And now just take that positive experience, wherever it is in your mind's eye, and keep it there. And then take the negative experience and move that over to the positive one. So you're taking the negative experience, moving it over, and putting it on top of the positive one. So lock it in place where the positive memory is. And notice what begins to happen to the negative memory. What you may begin to notice is that the negative memory begins to lose its oomph, if you will. Now, the brilliance of FasterEFT is that, sometimes the negative is so negative that it's hard to find a positive that can actually collapse it. And so what we do with FasterEFT is we address the negative first, tap it down as much as we can, and then bring in the positive resources to further collapse the negative. So I hope that makes sense. Now, flipping or re-imprinting can happen essentially two ways. One is manually, like we just did, right, when we take two and move it together. By the way, if you have one, if your negative is more stronger, more emotionally charged than the positive, and you just tried that exercise and that was the case for you, then you probably experienced a little bit of frustration or anxiety, and that's okay. And again, that's why tapping is so important, because again, as Robert Smith says, creator of FasterEFT, the dog with the bigger teeth wins. So if your negative experience or memory has bigger claws, then you're going to have to address it first before you bring in a positive and collapse it. So that's bad, good, collapse. Now, back to flipping, there's two ways you can do it. I'm going to say flip, but we're talking about flipping and re-imprinting, essentially the same thing. It can happen manually, like we just did, or it could happen naturally. And naturally is always fun. And again, I remember when I was tapping years ago when I first started doing this, every once in a while I'd work with a client and we'd work on something, and all of a sudden they would have a big smile. And I said, what's happening now? And they said, oh, I just remembered this person did something really nice for me, or this person actually cares about me, or I learned something from that experience and I just realized it, And so they had this natural flip. Their mind went to a positive resource after we tapped down the negative. So the mind filled in the gaps with the positive. And that's beautiful when it happens. And you may have experienced that before. I think when people first try this, and if they're lucky to have that kind of experience, that's when they get really excited, because they're like, oh my gosh, this stuff really works. Because it is nice when you are able to have that flip. And of course, it's always, it's really always what you're going for when you're working on issues, pains, and symptoms, things like that. So that's the natural flip, and that's great when it happens. So the other thing is, the other way to do it is manual, and there's a lot of different ways you can do this. that example I showed you where you take the bad and replace it with the good, you can do that manually. So when you're working with yourself, it's always good to have what we call a happy journal nearby. And the happy journal is a collection of positive experiences. It's a collection of memories that you just capture in writing or pictures or whatever you want to do it. And so you can have that nearby. When I work with clients, I always have them elicit 2 or 3 positive experiences before we actually get to work. So we'll have those handy, and I'll have them associate with them as best they can, really feel it before we even get to work. So we've got those close at hand. So as you're working on something, you can tap it down. You want to get it down as close to neutral as possible, and then you can invite in the positive memory. So one of the couple of ways you can do this. One is to again just sort of map across. So you just want to take the negative and put it into the positive and let that collapse. But you can also step into the positive experience, feel it, associate with it, and then send that feeling to where the negative experience used to be. I do this a lot when I'm working with myself. I actually imagine like a fire hose of just light and love and positive energy. I feel it, I associate with it, and then I imagine that fire hose of light sort of bathing that old memory, where that memory used to be, with that positivity. And that seems to be very effective. Again, remember tapping down the negative first and then bringing in the positive. So this is something that we call borrowing. You're borrowing the positive resources from another memory or experience. So that's very powerful. Another thing you can do is you can take a look at the memories. Now, one of the things that we do in FasterEFT is we try to be as thorough as possible. So we want to look at everything, including the expressions on people's faces in our memories. Now, it's important to remember that those people in our memories, those people are not here, right? So those people are actually a representation of our subconscious, of how we feel. So if we look at those expressions and we see a negative expression, we can focus on it and tap. Again, bringing the emotion down until the expression changes. And the goal here is to get smiles, right? Smiles in all the expressions. And you can do this on your own too. So you can move into somebody else's body, feel what they're feeling, look back at you, see if you're smiling, etc., etc. So it's essentially doing all this work, tapping on all the expressions until you get smiles all around. So that's very powerful. And finally, one of the things you can do is rewrite the memory or the story. And what I mean by that is simply tap it, tap until the emotional charge is close to neutral as you can, and then just ask yourself, well, how would I rather have had that experience go, right? So an example would be, if you had a conversation with somebody or maybe an argument, and it didn't go very well, and you feel guilty, and you feel angry, and you feel all of these negative emotions, you would tap, right, until you can get it down to 0, or as close as possible. Excuse me, chest cold. Get it down to 0 as close as possible, and then ask yourself, well, how would I like this to go? And maybe see yourself hugging that person, or smiling, or laughing, or loving them. Very, very powerful. And so you essentially rewrite the memory. I used to do this at night. I'd lay in bed and think about my day, and anything that I didn't like about my day, I would just rewrite it in my mind. Very powerful. All right, so I hope this helps. This video is going long. I'm trying to keep it under 15 minutes, so I hope that helps. Re-imprinting techniques and tools to do the flip. Love yourself. Be happy. Be healthy. You're awesome. Thanks for watching.